welcome to the Film Illogical Society, brought to you by Redacted Media and 6.5 Media. In today's episode, we look at another one of the essentials. And now, here are your hosts, Schulz and T.C. Witt.
Welcome to another podisode of the Film Illogical Society. This is the Essential Show, where we talk about the essential films in the history of filmmaking. We go all over the world. We go from Italy to America to Arabia. I am one of your hosts. I am Kris Schulz. With me, as always, is T.C. DeWitt. Hello, T.C. How are you?
I am well. I have the heat cranked up as high as it will go, so that
Good.
I am sweating as much as possible as we are. I'm a method podcaster, right? So
Yes.
I just like to keep things in the right temperature when we are recording. And I think I'm sweating more than anyone did in this movie somehow.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because, we all know. The movie today, if you couldn't guess, is 1962's Lawrence of Arabia.
Just one song. There's just one song through the movie.
Well, and like the film, we're going to start out by playing the signature song of the soundtrack for the first 5 minutes of the film to black screen.
Overture. It starts with an overture and it has an intermission with score. And this is from a yesteryear of film that they do. Aside from Quentin Tarantino, you do not get anymore in the mainstream worldwide film release world. And I'll tell you what, I like overtures. I like the intermission.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing of cinema from yesteryear because it comes from the theater. You come to the theater, you sit and you hear the overture of what you're about to see, and then it proceeds. I would have liked a card at least.
Yeah, I mean, it was a 3.5 hour long film.
Jeez.
And the intermission is like, it's about an hour and a half into the film, or 2.5 hours into the film is the intermission. So you have the biggest chunk before the intermission.
228 minutes total.
Yeah, it's a long film.
Yeah.
It takes a lot. I knew it was a long film, but I didn't fully look it up before I sat down and started watching it, and it took me a couple of days to actually watch it. Just because as of right now, I am not paid to make this show. So I have to work and I have to go to bed. And and I try to give you plenty of warning, TC, to give yourself plenty of time if you want to watch it in one sitting.
I ended up watching it I broke it up. I took the intermission and then went and got dinner and then came back and watched the second half. And I didn't mind. It's funny because I messaged you and said it didn't feel its length, and it's probably because I took a lunch break.
Well, and I think it moves. So I think you can have films that feel long and they're like 90 minutes.
Yeah, if we go to just our filmmaking experience as short filmmakers, we have done a lot of short film competitions, and a comment that was made by one of our friends and colleagues in the filmmaking is when watching another one that's particularly slow, if we're watching a short that's particularly slow or dragging, and I wish our minutes felt as long as these minutes. I wish we had this much time to tell a story because it's just sometimes, if you're not paying attention to pace, if you're not editing is so critical in something like this. It's not just going to be the acting. You need to push the story along. And I'm sure a cynic would look at this movie and say, I could cut 2 hours of people on camels going across the desert from this movie and get it down to a reasonable length.
Yeah, but I think that cynic would clearly miss the entire point of this film, or a lot of the points of the film. Because so before we get into the film, like what had you seen this film before? What were your expectations going in? What were your thoughts after seeing it?
So I hadn't seen this film before. I am certainly much what this Essentials collection is doing for us is the movies that when you're talking in cinematic conversation with people that you reference the greats, right? Even if you hadn't seen them, you want to sound snooty. So you're like, oh yeah, Lawrence of Arabia, one of the all-time greats. So I knew enough about the movie that I could maintain some sort of conversation. I knew the matchstick, the moment of blowing the matchstick out.
Yeah.
And I knew of the, what is it, like a 200 millimeter lens, some insane lens used for Omar Sharif's entrance, which I thought preceded the match going out, because it's this, the match goes out and you get this fiery desert scape. I'm like, this is it. This is that historic cinematic shot with the insane lens. No, it's like later when he shows up and kills the guide where he comes riding out of the desert. Not a very impressive shot for how impressive it was that that lens was used once in history.
It was a special made lens that it is named after the director.
Yeah, but I had not seen it before. I knew a couple images. I knew Peter O'Toole, and I knew that Sir Alec Guinness is in this in Brownface, which one of our short films, Stakeout Stories, references in. Yeah, it's terrible. But it was a different time. It was very bad. You wouldn't do that now. Sir Alec Guinness playing Brownface.
Yeah, I think the only person of Middle Eastern descent in this film that has a main role is Omar Sharif.
Omar Sharif.
Everyone else,
yeah.
Everyone else that is playing somebody from Arabia are either English actors like Sir Alec Guinness or from Spain.
Yeah,
Spanish
just wild
actors.
There's
like Anthony
certainly
Quinn.
Anthony Quinn.
Yeah, Anthony Quinn.
He plays the other
sheriff for Sharif.
Yes,
yeah,
yes, yeah.
The Adu Abu Tai.
Yes, yeah,
yeah. So I mean, this film is chock full of big time actors, like you know, and you know, I didn't realize this was Peter O'Toole's movie. Like, this is the movie that put him
on the map.
Yeah, he was a nobody before this. Like he had plays, but he wasn't a big time film actor, and this film showcased just how amazing of an actor he is.
Well, I'll say this. You'd asked me what I thought of before and what I thought after that. So, yes, I had not seen this before. I knew of it, some Simpson references here and there.
Yeah.
Having finally seen it, Peter O'Toole is fantastic in this. First and foremost, what a beautiful looking man. That dude's eyes, he's so handsome. Seriously, the film captured him so well. The camera captured him so well. He is a very good looking man. But not to put his looks aside, sorry to objectify him. He is very handsome. Oh my God. He is so good in this. The reason this didn't feel its length is because of how damn good he is. He is compelling as hell to watch, and he's playing a very interesting, fascinating human being, because this is based on the memoirs of a real person, or the biography of a real person, T.E. Lawrence. And Peter O'Toole is a rock star in this. And while there are still a lot of the classic stylings of cinema being presented here, he's as good as any actor you're going to get today in his commitment to this and the depth at which he portrayed this character. Very impressive. Very impressed by his performance in this.
When I mean, his overall, just the acting over, I mean, Omar Sharif, like, I knew he was a great actor. He was so good in this film. You know, and the other, you know, even with Alec Guinness in Brownface.
Sure. He's great too. And actually funny, Omar Sharif, just to mention, I was talking about Peter O'Toole. You could put him up against any great actor today. I think Omar Sharif, even more so, has a very contemporary acting style. I don't know if he came from a theater background like Peter O'Toole and Alec Guinness and a lot of the actors of that era. He feels very much plucked directly out of a film you'd see today. He's so good.
He was a big time actor of Middle Eastern films before.
I'm Egypt, I would imagine.
Yep, Egypt. And he, you know, so Egypt was one of the few places in the Middle East that did not ban this film. because Omar Sharif kind of, said, "Hey, I'm in it and I'm a big star, so we need to watch
Trust
this
me,
film."
this is good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, and yeah, Alec Guinness, Anthony Quinn, Jack Hawkins. I could go on and on reading all these actors. You won't hear me mention any actresses' names, though.
It did not dawn on me.
Female speaking roles.
It did not dawn on me that I hadn't even seen a woman until there's a scene near the end of this in the last 45 minutes where a village has been massacred and there's there's bodies everywhere and they do this panning shot past a dead woman, and it sort of hit me. I went, I think that might be the first lady I've seen in this movie.
Yeah,
not a single speaking role of a woman.
Nope. I remember there being a nurse nun type woman that comes out of the Jeep at the end too, at that same village
in Damascus. Yeah, when they attack Damascus, the Red Cross shows up after Lawrence went in there ahead of the British Army and just freaking slaughtered the place.
Yeah, but yeah, no speaking roles at all for which, you know what? I mean, it. This is World War I. We're in the Middle East, which is a very, especially at women's roles are more reserved for the households, and so it's a, you could look at that today in many countries where there isn't that equality.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you were to direct this and put a woman in a more prominent role in the film, it would just be just a more contentious point of realism of the era, of the actual era and all that of the film. But still, it's very odd to see any film this long without any females.
Yeah, I don't feel like you would get away with that now, nor would you want to. It's the representation is important in telling stories, and even the perspective of this British officer who he's an intellectual. Lawrence is an intellectual. He has an idea of war, and he becomes, I think it's Ali, Omar Sharif's character, who tells him that he's becoming seduced by war. He's falling in love. He's becoming desert mad. He's becoming obsessed with war. And it's overall, this whole movie is this rise and fall of this man, Lawrence. And it ends with this does something that I'm annoyed by for the most part, but I feel like it's okay in this, is starting with the end, this opens with the death of Lawrence. And then who was this man? You see people talk about him at the funeral saying oh, he was a poet. He was an artist. He was a philosopher. He was a hero. He was Barnum and Bailey.
Son of a bitch.
He's a son of a bitch. And then we flash to the beginning of his tale of rising to become this heroic figure in the Arabian Turkish portion of this war. And it definitely gets to his head because he goes a little mad over time. He loses himself.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely there is so Lawrence is a young British officer, played by Peter O'Toole, and it's World War I. So the Brits are over in Egypt, in Cairo. They are controlling that. They're helping the local populations fight the Ottoman Turk Empire, which was one of the Axis powers, I guess, or the it's Ottoman Turks and the Hungarian Empire and Germany against the rest of the world for World War I. And so there wasn't at the time there wasn't the countries like we have today. There were tribes. There were groups of people, but there wasn't one Saudi Arabia. There wasn't a Jordan. There weren't these individual countries. There were just a bunch of tribes that were all controlled essentially by the Ottoman Turks. Mm-hmm. So those are the bad guys. So a general sees something in Lawrence, like a fear, a lack of fear, or just a comfort or something, and decides to send him to meet with Prince Faisal, who is that's the character played by Alec Guinness, who is he's a real, these are all real people based on real people. Prince Faisal is like, he's the descendant of the current king of Jordan. So there still is a connection there.
And Faisal wants to work with the Brits to clear out the desert, to claim the desert for them. It's this very calculated war move that just help us get Damascus, help us take the desert back for ourselves. It's mine anyway.
Yeah.
And
yeah, because the Turks were from Turkey in northern, and they conquered this area, so the people felt that they should have the area. Yeah, sorry.
Very, very much a prince, a pretender. He's not a warrior. This is not a guy who's ever raised a sword, raised a gun to go off to battle. He sends people to battle. He's dressed elegantly every time you see him. Faisal is. And he's a really smart guy. He knows how to work the system in his favor, much like warmongers do.
Yeah, it's so there's the soldiers and the fighters, and then there's the politicians. And you definitely see both of them doing what they have to do, and using Lawrence, who becomes this figure that is revered by the Arab soldiers. It's a film. So we're gonna break up the plot into multiple points because it's a very long film. Yeah. But as far as starting films go, like I saw some analysis on the first time that you meet Lawrence, and there's about a 5-minute scene where he's in an office.
He's a map. He's a map maker.
He's map maker in an office,
painting maps. Yeah.
Yep. And he has one of the more famous scenes from this film where he puts out a match with his bare hands, and you learn so much about him, that he is a different thinker, that he isn't afraid of pain. Like he has a very high tolerance for pain.
Right. He doesn't fear pain. I think he even says that to the guy who tries to put the match out. He's like, "Ow, it hurts." He's like, "Of course it hurts. You just have to learn not to be afraid of it."
And so, yeah, and he wants something bigger. Like, he's bored in there. And it was neat, like the costume designer, she purposely put him in a soldier's uniform that was like 2 sizes too small for him. So they give the impression that he doesn't look like he fits here.
Yeah, literally does not fit. That's clever. That's good, clever choice.
And yeah, so it's so I had also not seen this film before. I had heard of it when I heard the soundtrack. It's like, yes, I know that. Like the overture song is just, yeah. It brings you in. It's like one of those songs that it just perfectly just pulls you right into the movie. It has enough of a Arabian sound to it, and big band sound that you're just drawn in. And I will say, like, I'm gonna spoil the end of this podcast. I really did enjoy this film.
Yeah.
I learning how long it is. Part of me knew it was long, but I didn't necessarily want to know how long it was, because then I'm sitting there going, "Oh my gosh, this is long."
Counting the minutes so when I saw the length as well, because you gave me a heads up, like, it was a long one. I'm like, I expected it to be. It got me to just look back at some of the other great films of this era. 10 Commandments, almost 4 hours long. Gone with the Wind, 4 hours long. And I'm like, the epic film is epic in every way. We do not get 4-hour movies now, nor would people want 4 hours now, at least in the cinema. You can have the rare occasion of a 4-hour version of Hateful Eight. No, thank you. You can have the sit at home and watch the 4-hour version of Return of the King. Okay, I can pause and also watch this in my underwear. But a sword and sandals epic desert quest adventure movie like this, no way, no how is anyone coming to see a 4-hour movie.
I think it would have to be something special. I think it would have to be something different. Because you're right, like the era of the 4-hour epic film, and this is in the middle of that era. It was like the superhero movie of today, right? Like these were telling these films are based on these larger than life characters, whether it be biblical or whether it be wartime, like Lawrence of Arabia or Bridge Over the River Kwai, or these are just long epic films that nowadays it would the studio is going to bank it and make it into 2 or 3 different films.
The last episode we watched was Dulce Vita, Dulce Vita, and I had mentioned that it felt like we had binged a season of a show or a series because it's broken up in these very concise chapters. When I hit the intermission for this, I tried to take that in consideration as well. If this felt like that, if it felt episodic, I don't quite think so. It does have a chapter narrative to it where we're going from one place to the other, but they blend together so well that it just feels like one full story, that it doesn't feel like this is an easy place to stop. This is an easy place to stop. It doesn't. Like the blowing out of the match into the desert feels like the end of the prologue. I would almost put the title there in a modern movie. But once the thing gets going, it doesn't stop. And I guess just in discussing the length here, it never struck me as, good Lord, this is long and pointless.
Yeah. There are some long scenes where they're riding camels, they're going from here to there. There's one person on a camel, there's 2 people and 2 camels.
Panning.
And they're giving such but the point is they're riding these camels in a desert, in one of the harshest deserts in the world. And it's giving the audience that sense of just the nothingness that is out there, because the vastness of this desert. Shot, the beautiful huge shots are just so vast, and I think you learn a lot about Lawrence, because at one point he has somebody that is he has a guide. And at one point, his guide is killed, and he needs to figure out how to get from where he is to where he needs to go. And the fact that he's able to do that, again, he's a map maker, so he knows the terrain. He has a compass, so he can tell what direction he's going in. But still, it just kind of it really drives home and establishes the type of character that he is, that he isn't going to go with the guy who killed his guide, because he's not friends with murderers.
Right. And he has a distaste
at that point.
Yeah. At that point, it's very clear. He makes it clear he does not have any taste for bloodshed, and he has no place in his heart for unnecessary deaths, which is a part of the journey he goes on. He's not someone who is looking to glorify war and murder people. And even when the first time he has to kill someone, he does a very bad job. He does. There's basically an execution moment where, as a mediator, someone who doesn't have a stake in this, he's a middleman. He decides to take it on himself to cast judgment on this prisoner, and he has to kill him, and he's never killed before, and it takes him the entire revolver's 6 bullets to get the job done, and he throws the gun away afterwards. And later in the film, as he's become this hero of this war, and he's blowing up trains from a distance, and he's letting the gunfire fly over dunes. He's not getting in people's faces, but when he eventually is literally getting blood on his hands, he's lost his way. And much earlier in the film, he loses his compass, so he literally loses his way. So there's a lot of good metaphorical stuff like that, but this character journey, because this whole piece is a character piece. This entire movie is an epic, of course. It's a war film. Yep. It's an adventure film. But this is Lawrence of Arabia. Who is this guy, and what does he become as a result of his lust for meaning, his lust for adventure and purpose out there in the desert. He falls in love with the desert. He loses himself. Whatever you said, you already said you liked it as well. I really did.
I liked it.
Yeah. I really did enjoy this as well because of things like that. This feels like classic cinema often does, like a novel being presented to you visually. Not necessarily an adaptation, because you can adapt a novel nowadays in film, make it exciting, make it cinematic. And this is certainly a cinematic movie. But classic films like this, especially long ones like this, it does feel like you're sitting back, closing your eyes, and having someone read this to you and letting your imagination go to these far off places. And,
absolutely. I see where the modern epic films, and again, we're not coming out with 3.5, 4 hour films anymore. We're going to make
3 hours. We'll push
3 hours, but if it's this long of a tale, we're going to make it multiple movies.
Part 1, so Dune Part 1, Dune Part 2.
Right, that or Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit.
I will say this, since I just mentioned Dune, and we often in the discussion of this is, why is this essential? What does it have what echoes into modern film? I'm not just saying Dune as, it also takes place in the desert. I do feel much of what Denis Villeneuve's newest version of Dune touches on is a lot of what this film does cinematically. The slow, thoughtful, very character-driven portions of Dune are very reminiscent of this. And I don't know for sure, but I'm curious if the guy who wrote Dune, Herbert, if he was influenced by Lawrence of Arabia when writing Dune. I would be curious to know.
I mean, I would say absolutely the director of the current version of Dune was. Mm-hmm. Just like you said, like kind of using the inspiration and just giving the sense of isolation, loneliness, all that, by using those wide shots and showing these little itty bitty people in this film, little itty bitty on camels going through the desert, and seeing how vast and ginormous and intimidating that whole desert is.
The setting can be a character in a film. Look at something like Dredd, the Carl Urban Dredd. That building is a character. In Mega City 1, it's very much a character in the film. New York often is a character. When you look at something, say, like Taxi Driver or West Side Story, Los Angeles is a character in Collateral, right? And this desert is very much a character that gets just as much attention as Peter O'Toole does, as Lawrence. And echoes of that in There Will Be Blood, Paul Thomas Anderson's movie There Will Be Blood, with Daniel Longview and oil. I'm an oil man, right? The fact that the opening 20 minutes of There Will Be Blood has no dialogue other than the desert, the land itself becomes a character. And I know this was restored in 2012. The Lawrence of Arabia was restored in 2012. I would love for someone to take a stab at restoring this and coloring it more towards a modern sensibility, because a lot of those deserts shots, while I can acknowledge were vistas that were beyond belief, they're desaturated. They're very old film grain. I would love for someone to take a crack at recoloring this, because it's as impressive as those vistas were. I think to something again like Dune, where you see those massive shots of Arrakis, and it's awe-inspiring because of the color, the saturation within the sand. That's a minor complaint towards this. I'm not going to judge this on, it was made 1962. Where's the cobalt and tungsten? No.
I don't know. I feel like the look is, I mean, they're filming in 140-degree heat.
It was amazing to not see people sweating their faces off.
And yeah, especially in the makeup that some people were in. And to think like film stock is highly flammable. It's very combustible. I mean, most of the one of the biggest tragedies in the history of film is all the film that has been lost to fires.
Yeah,
all the movies.
Look to Inglourious Bastards to see how combustible film is.
Yeah. And the fact that they were able to film in the deserts of Jordan, the deserts of Morocco, the deserts in Spain, in some of those blistering heats, it's amazing that they
like
have
walking
as
around
much as they did.
It's like walking around with dynamite.
It's like walking around with a open bucket of gasoline while smoking a cigarette. That's what this is, and it's amazing to me that it looks as good as it does. I mean, someone could color it, but I think the color is so unique to this, and I obviously we both watched the more restored version because that's all that's out there. But I wonder what the original looked like before it was restored. Like,
well, and to go back to the discussion of classic cinema and what going to the movies used to be, where it was a 4-hour experience with an intermission, much like going to Broadway and seeing a 2-act show. Getting dressed up to go experience this film and to be sitting on the Panavision Technicolor, like in the desert like that. I wonder, based on the fact this came out in 1962, so there's very, very, very likely that there were soldiers of the World War I era who would have been alive to see this film. I wonder if they had any sort of PTSD. I know when Saving Private Ryan came out at the movie theater I worked at, there were soldiers who had come, who had been to D-Day and experienced Saving Private Ryan and left rattled by the realism of it. Similar with Black Hawk Down. When that one came out, we had 2 soldiers who actually had been part of it, who came to the theater I worked at and also came out and said rattled that what they had just seen. And I wonder if seeing that on this desert just up on the big screen, the reality of it was as more awe-inspiring in its original presentation than it is now, because we're so departed from this. And we can talk about the social, political aspects of this film because you said you wanted to break this up into pieces, because there's a lot to talk about here. I'm just curious if the epicness was almost lost in the fact that I watched it on my big TV, not to be fair, but I could still be affected by the epic vastness of the movie. But I would bet this is an experience to see on the massive big screen that it was meant to be seen on.
Yeah, I think that would be impressive. Like put it on a
do one of those Fathom events. I just went and saw The Godfather for the 50th anniversary. AMC did a screening of The Godfather, so I got to see it on the big screen. And yeah, that movie's not a freaking gangster guns flying movie like you would see now, but damn, was it an experience to see up on the big screen. And I think while this is a 4-hour movie, there is a part of me that would consider going to see it on the big screen if offered.
Yeah, oh man, I think that would be that would definitely be an amazing. Just seeing some of the shots are just beautiful. Speaking of beautiful things, we should take a sponsor break right now.
Oh, that is one of the most beautiful things when it comes to podcasting for the beautiful 6.5 Media.
Mm-hmm. So we will be back right after this.
Hi, I'm Ryan.
And I'm Mike.
And we are brothers-in-law. We both love beer and are amateur home brewers.
Wait, so does that make us brothers-in-law?
I believe so.
Every episode, we will talk about aspects of beer and home brewing.
But nothing super technical because we're learning this too.
So join us as we sit down together and dive into something beer-related.
Whether it's a little field research, tasting a certain beer style, or beers from a specific brewery.
Talk about our experiences brewing beer at home, including our own solo brews, as well as themed competitions we'll set up along the way.
We will also talk about some of our favorite aspects of brewing, like hops, extra ingredients, building our brew cave, and more. And of course, our own misadventures that have happened along the way.
So, if you like beer, are home brewing already,
or if you have an interest in home brewing and don't know where to start,
join us on Brothers-in-Law Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
And make sure to follow us on Twitter at Brothers-in-Law and check out our website, brothersinlaw.com.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Jake, have you ever been looking for a definitive Nintendo ranking and can't seem to find it because it's just everybody's own opinion?
Honestly, all the time, Sam.
Well, I'm looking for someone to give us the answers.
Wait, you mean like a podcast made by two young, handsome men where they create a definitive top 5 list of all things Nintendo?
Should we just do it ourselves?
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
Let's give it a shot. I'm Sam.
And I'm Jake.
And at Top 5 Nintendo, I'm going to give you my top 5 list.
And I'm going to give you my top 5 list.
And then we're going to duke it out and see what the real top 5 is.
Illogical Society and Movie Travelers have partnered up for a great offer. You can be Lawrence of Arabia in your own adventure. In this once-in-a-lifetime experience, you can go off on your own in the middle of the desert with only your camel, your love of maps, and a compass to guide you. You'll get a shot in the arm when you have to find your own watering hole and hope the current owner doesn't catch you. Sound good? Like 140 degrees good? Great. Simply use Film Ill and you will get an official 25% discount.
Even though no one has survived this destination vacation, the Filmological Society is not responsible for any lost lives, lost camels, lost limbs, death by dehydration, death by sword, death by camel, or death by dessert, which was probably a typo. But just to cover our bases, we're not responsible for that either.
And we're back. All right.
Hey,
well,
those
are great sponsors.
Yeah, that's I wasn't expecting such great sponsors this week, but I'm glad that we have them. Thank you, sponsors. Use that coupon code.
Yeah, I've heard great things about that. Not by anyone who's actually come back from it, but I've heard some great things about it.
I no, absolutely not would ever want to do this.
No,
do not sign me up. Do not sign me up.
I couldn't imagine. So this will kind of lean in. So Lean. So we're going to talk. So the director is Sir David Lean. I had not heard of him before this.
Neither have I.
But I've heard of the films that he did, and I think he did epic films. That's basically what he did. So Bridge on the River Kwai, Dr. Zhivago, A Passage to India, Lawrence of Arabia. These are all the big films, and he was.
Those are some of the epicest epics that ever epicked.
Yeah, and he was a big-time director when he did this in 1962. He was already a sir. He had already done A Bridge on the River Kwai that came out in 1957. You have directors that do. They'll do a film a year. They'll just do lots of films.
Right.
And then
So
you have
always working.
Yep. Then you have the directors that take 3, 4, 5 years between films.
The auteurs, Aronofsky, Tarantino.
That's this guy. He went 57 for Bridge on the River Kwai, 62 for Lawrence of Arabia, and then 65 for Dr. Zhivago. So those are like his 3 biggest films. Boom, 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 over like a 10-year period.
And those are three films you will find on some of the essential lists. Now, maybe not ours per se, but some of the AFI is going to have that. You're going to find that in the IMDb 250. Those 3 movies, Zhivago and Lawrence of Arabia particularly, you're going to find on lists like that. Man, Dr. Zhivago, I know Dr. Zhivago was an influence on George Lucas for Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
Lawrence of Arabia had to have been an influence on George Lucas for Star Wars.
Well, I will. So I'll say that this is Steven Spielberg's favorite film.
Ah, really?
So Spielberg will watch. He said in an interview that before he goes into any new project, he watches this film to be inspired.
Wow. So Ready Player One was influenced by Spielberg's love. Well, no, look at Raiders Lost Ark. That makes sense.
Yeah.
There are some shots of the desert in Raiders Lost Ark. That makes absolute sense.
And I bring him up because I think he and George Lucas, there's a lot of similarities between them. I mean, they're obviously, they've worked together for many of their projects, and they consult each other. They have consulted each other for many of their projects. So I would say absolutely. I mean, I think, we've seen some other films that were directly connected to Star Wars and George Lucas. Yes. I mean, the desert scenes in the first Star Wars film, where
Star Wars, the first Star Wars.
The first Star Wars, yep.
Yeah.
Star Wars, the Star Wars.
Yep.
Where, you see the vastness of the desert with the 2 little droids walking and the giant skeleton. Like, that's absolutely pulled from this film just to show that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's yeah. And and when we get into the epicness, just like all the, so this is all filmed on location. There's no studio here. And he's
no
got
CG either.
And I cannot recall a film with this many camels.
Oh my gosh, there's an attack sequence that has camels and horses, but there's got to be 300 people in saddles racing towards a battle. That's not CG. They didn't have the ability to do such thing. Right now, we would throw it in the Unreal Engine and you'd fill out like 200 of those would be fake, but wow. Well, there's a certain element of choreography necessary to make a shot like that work.
Yeah, and a lot of the soldiers used were from Jordan, or they were professional soldiers from the countries that this was filmed in. So, but still, I mean, like. Yeah, Peter O'Toole having to learn how to ride a camel. Not only ride a camel, but look like he had mastered it.
Oh, sure.
Like he apparently the first time he rode the camel, like he started bleeding through his pants.
From his butt?
From his butt.
Like, was it from chafing?
Yeah, from bouncing, chafing, and all that.
Oh my God.
He inserted like foam underneath the saddle that that the local Bedouin tribes, like, they adopted that.
How come we never thought of this? We should be putting padding on all of our rear ends here.
So much more comfortable.
Genius. White savior indeed.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But yeah, so just I mean if you're going to watch, and we're not wrapping up yet because there's so much more to talk about this film, but
sure.
if you're gonna just look at just this vastness, this epic film, and how you have camels, horses involved. You have hundreds of extras.
Mm-hmm.
Just, oh my god!
You gotta appreciate it. You gotta appreciate it for that.
Yeah.
I don't know if and we can segue into the whatever you'd like from here, but this isn't going to be a movie. I'm not going to say this is an academic viewing, right? We can talk about Citizen Kane being good or bad, but it is an essential viewing as an academic viewing. I think I also said something else we watched I called an academic viewing, where it might not necessarily be enjoyable to a modern sensibility, but there's an academic nature to it. I don't quite think Lawrence of Arabia here is strictly a textbook film that you need to watch and appreciate for just the production and its existence, because narratively and performance-wise, it's still quite good. It's slow, no doubt about it. It's slow, and the action sequences aren't. This isn't Mad Max Fury Road, right? You're not going to see an explosion that's going to rock your seat, but they're blown up trains here. There's battle sequences, like you said. You just described the hundreds of extras running into the heat of battle. So it's not strictly academic viewing. There is a lot to enjoy here, or to dissect from the production as well as the acting. I'll speak to Peter O'Toole again being incredible in this. Like every word out of his mouth is laced with some sort of subtext, and that's a credit to the script, but as well as him as an actor to bring Lawrence to life like this.
So let's call him Lawrence. Peter O'Toole was paid $50,000 for his role.
I'll take it.
Among other things. Albert Finney was looked at to be cast in that role at first.
Oh, I thought you were saying he was in this. Yeah.
No.
Albert Finney. Okay, so I mean, Albert Finney I can think of from like the Bourne movies or Ocean's 12. Or Skyfall. He's a character actor. Albert Finney. It's not Michael Gambon.
Yeah. He was in Big Fish. He is the dad in Big Fish.
Yes.
He was the lawyer in Aaron Brockovich. But so for his screen tests. The studio spent $100,000.
What? To just screen test a dude?
To just screen test a dude.
What the hell, Hollywood? You're just throwing money away. What a waste.
Yeah. Well,
that's a film.
You're paying more than you paid for the actor who eventually did it. But,
who got the part.
Again, Peter O'Toole is a no-name.
Good God. Well, he was named after that.
He was. I mean, I think AFI or one of those rated him. Here we go. Premiere Magazine rated Peter O'Toole's performance as the #1 performance of all time for this film. As an actor,
that's saying a lot. I'll admit I keep going back to talking about classic cinema versus modern cinema, which is a part of this podcast conversation. Anyway. I think Omar Sharif does a much more contemporary performance. I think Peter O'Toole is brilliant in this, but there are those moments that still feel the echoes of theater and talking in such a specific way that feels very theatrical.
Yeah, I think so. He also had a problem of breaking often and just laughing. So I think that
makes it very human. That's good.
Yeah, that was a technique that he had to really focus in, because even he was frustrating the other actors, especially Alec Guinness, because he kept just laughing, and especially serious scene. And Alec Guinness is a serious actor. I mean, while he was in brownface, and we all agree that wasn't necessary. There were many capable actors that could have played that same role.
Right. But he is brilliant in this.
He is, and he nailed the accent and how the real Prince Faisal moved and carried himself, so much so that people who knew the real Prince Faisal were fooled by
Oh,
Ella
really?
Guinness. Yes.
That is awesome. That's a good credit to his acting. Wow.
They had thought that Faisal was back.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and it is a shame. I mean this film, Omar Sharif, again, I mean, like you said, was brilliant. I had seen him in other films, and he was always somebody that stood out. He had the signature mustache, and this is the first film he had it in. This is the film that gave him that mustache that carried him through the rest of his days in Hollywood.
It's a good look. He made the right choice.
But I mean, before this film, he was basically in Egyptian films or Arabic films. He wasn't in Hollywood. He wasn't a Hollywood actor, but he was a huge actor in that world. And so this film brought him into Hollywood and made him a huge actor across the world.
Well deserved. Very well deserved.
Absolutely well deserved. I have the feeling we'll be seeing him in some of the other films that we look at as we continue the series.
Yeah. Well, looking towards the second half of this movie, this rise and fall situation, right? By the time we hit intermission, Lawrence has become this hero, and then you slowly see him becoming this tool of the Brits. The British want him to do certain things their way, and he's either it's gotten to his head, the kind of hero he is of the people, but he starts breaking the rules and doing things his way. And this is a war movie without being. We think of war movies. I think World War II is specifically what pops into people's heads.
Yeah,
this is a war film. Being World War I era, it's a much different type of war, but it is fascinating that even then, so this is 1962, based on a story that was set in the early teens of the 1900s, that the military isn't quite different then than it is now in terms of how they chew up and spit out whoever they need to get what they want. Right? Like we watch Lawrence he gets so involved. He does fall in love with the desert, and he does become a victim of war. Despite being a victor of war, he's a victim of war. And the military just says, cool, we got what we needed. Bye. And the movie, like, it goes this epic distance only to end what for a moment felt like a very flat ending until the last image of him in the Jeep, and you see the motorcycle ahead of him spraying the dust on his face. I just got chills just thinking about the call and response, the poetic cinematic nature of how this movie begins versus that final moment of him getting dust thrown in his face. Like, brilliant. It's amazing. But yeah, I speak to the military styling of the movie, which is very, thank you, move along. You've had your orders, get the hell out of here.
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, he remained a tool until he no longer was useful, right? Like he had inspired the Arabic tribes to band together and to conquer things so that English soldiers weren't used.
Yeah, Faisal used him just as much as the military used him, and that's a really incredible bit of storytelling. I looked at something like, say, Jarhead, the Jake Gyllenhaal movie, Desert Storm era. He becomes this. He's a sniper, but he never gets to snipe. He's a tool that's never utilized, and yet he experienced war. And how does that crush him? The way the British military just tosses Lawrence aside and is not too different than that first time he had to kill a guy he saved, for crying out loud, and he in distaste throws the gun away. It's a lot of really, you can really dig deep beneath the surface of the metaphor in this and the figurative nature and of what's happening in this heroic story. It's like the fall of a victor, I guess, right? That's the rise and fall of someone who wins, but what does he really win in the end? He just lost himself. He never finds out who he is. That's such a God, the more I'm literally just spitting this out as I'm thinking about it and talking about it with you, and I'm seeing stuff like Daniel Day-Lewis or even someone like Leonardo DiCaprio and how they will like absorb a character and try to break it down and present it on the screen. And yeah, I don't know if Peter O'Toole would be considered a method actor, because I know he's a contemporary of someone like Marlon Brando, who is, you know, the forerunner of method filmmaking.
Who and who, by the way, was the very first choice to play Lawrence of Arabia.
Oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. Let's see, he would have done On the Waterfront by this point.
Yep. So he was a big name, but he didn't want to spend 2 years sitting on a camel, he said. So yeah, so just to kind of put so this was a film that after viewing, the family of T.E. Lawrence were mostly upset. They did not recognize their relative on screen.
That's a shame. Did they feel like he was disrespected on the screen?
That it just didn't represent who. I mean, first of all, there's a huge height difference between the 5'5" T.E. Lawrence and the 6'2" Peter O'Toole. But there were a lot of undertones given, so I think that there's a little bit of homosexuality undertones. There was so originally, and David Lean came out later and said, yeah, he filmed a lot of the scenes between Peter O'Toole and Omar Sharif's characters as two characters that were in love with each other.
Oh wow, yeah, I can absolutely see that.
There's also at one point, T.E. Lawrence is captured and tortured. And originally there was to be more, I guess, a more pronounced scene where T.E. Lawrence is forced to pleasure the general of the Ottoman Turks.
Oh, you know what? Okay, I know exactly the scene you're talking about, because the general like tortures him, walks away, leaves his door cracked open, and like a freaking pervy voyeur is like watching him get flogged, right? He's just getting caned. And all I could think was like, okay, dude, getting your rocks off watching this happen. So it does not surprise me for you to suggest that they had considered 1962. No freaking way that was going to make it into the movie.
Yeah. I mean, there definitely is. I mean,
the implications are there.
There's and there's definitely you look at it now and again the David Lean is Sir David Lean is looking at how can I present this, because I mean it is based on a book written about T.E. Lawrence, and I think there are some of those pieces. There are some pieces too, like when you make a film like that, oftentimes you have to combine different characters, but the named character is the one that's known. So Allenby, the second general that Lawrence works with, his family, his relatives also complained about how he was portrayed in the film. So
it's tough.
I think
it's tough.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen. But so in the real life, T.E. Lawrence, his death is a little bit of a mystery. While he did die, that's not the mysterious part. It's the circumstances around him dying. So in the film, it's the opening scene, as was mentioned before, and he gets into a motorcycle accident, flies off, and dies.
Yeah.
And while that is reported, the real reason that he died, at the time of his death is in the 1930s, 1932 or 33.
Mm-hmm.
And the real T.E. Lawrence had, he didn't want any more war. He didn't want any more battles or anything like that. So he was negotiating a peace treaty with Nazi Germany.
Oh, between the Brits and the Germans?
Between the Brits and the Germans.
Okay, wow. That's cool.
But he had this larger than life personality. So it would be like if like George Clooney just goes over to North Korea and says, "Hey, let's make a peace treaty."
Right. Someone.
So he's not really.
Famous. Yeah, he was a hero.
He's more famous. He's hero. He's not really like a representative of the government, but he is popular with the people. So like if he were to come back and say, "Hey, look what I have," more people would buy in, and so there's conspiracy theories as far as what really happened. Did he die in an accident like that? Was he assassinated?
Yeah.
And again, was it British government? Was it the German government that did it? That didn't want that.
That doesn't sound like tinfoil hat conspiracy. That sounds more chaste and realistic conspiracy.
Yeah. So I think it's and just to think, had he been successful in that, just how different this world
would have been. Yeah.
And again, that's if the Nazi Germany respected the peace treaty, that is, but so just I found a note that I had here. So you had mentioned before about the special lens. We talked about the special lens. Mm-hmm. So there's a scene, Omar Sharif's entrance. It's coming through a mirage. It is a spectacular scene. Spielberg even says it is, in his opinion, the greatest scene ever captured on film.
It's a really cool moment. Yeah.
It used a one-time use lens, a 482 millimeter lens.
I knew it was a few hundred. I remember. I knew the legend of this lens. That is,
it was created specifically for this shot and has never been used again.
Wow, just one and done.
I
almost don't think it was worth it. It's a great looking shot, but the first time we see the desert or the sun rising after the flame blows out, that's the best looking shot of the desert in the whole movie. I would love that to be the moment we see Omar Sharif, but because like as soon as the match blows out and we cut to that, I'm like, oh, this is it. This is that epic shot. No, it is not. Okay.
Oh yeah, I was looking for it too. And you're like, oh no, oh no. But yeah, and Spielberg also, because he was part of the restoration, but he's on record as saying, like, if you were to try to make this film today, this was a $15 million budget film in 1962.
Okay.
And he said, if you try to make this film the way that David Lean made it in 62, it would be a $300 million film.
Zack Snyder presents.
Yeah.
I don't know if you could. I already said this earlier. I don't know if you could make a movie like this now. I don't feel like there's an audience that would have the patience for not just the length, but the pace at which this movie is told. We've come so far in terms of the kinetic energy of editing and visual effects and whatnot that this story told again, and there right now there's no place for desert epics right now. Not in the mainstream blockbuster cinema scape that we have.
Dune is a good example where I think
that's as close. Yeah.
It's close, and you have a built-in audience that is super excited to see Dune on film, just like Lord of the Rings. You had that audience of people that loved the novels and are ready for it. I think I think the era of the 4-hour film is unless it's straight to Netflix or something like that, where people at home they can pause it and things like the Irishman.
Yeah, the Irishman was like over 3 hours.
So by the way, Scorsese, this is also one of his favorite films. Not a surprise.
I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, long shots. Both of them love long shots. This is all full of long shots.
I would bet Francis Ford Coppola really likes this as well, because there's moments of Apocalypse Now, and I had just seen The Godfather, so that's fresh in my mind as well, in how Lawrence of Arabia is captured. That feels very similar. the way the camera pans and the way shots are held on actors as they perform felt reminiscent of, or I guess Coppola's work feels similar, at least in his two biggest movies, to something like this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of the big directors that established themselves in the 70s, 80s, 90s, like this film has to be near the top, if not at the top of their list.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that answers the question: is this essential?
Is this
Absolutely.
essential? Is it? Go ahead. You say it's essential?
I say it's essential. I mean, it's a long film. You have to sit down, but just seeing the epic shots, understanding the motivation behind the shots, and the, I mean, just taking this character who, there's never going to be a biopic that is 100% true to character. There's never going to be, because nobody's that interesting. But to take a larger than life character and portray him on film, and to do it with a no-name actor, you have this epic film, and your main star, your main person, is somebody that nobody knows. I mean,
thank God he was good.
Yeah. I mean, especially when you go from Marlon Brando and Albert Finney, both known actors, names that would draw people in,
mm-hmm.
to Lawrence of, to Peter O'Toole.
He is very handsome.
Yeah, and both of his name stand for male genitalia. So.
I'm going to say essential. I'm going to say that this is an essential film with some caveats. To look at epicness, whether you're going to do something like Star Wars or you're going to do something like Dune, to look at a biopic about a hero who may not have felt like a hero in the end, from an acting perspective, I think there's certainly something to be watched. That's an essential piece of cinematic performance that you would watch. Like, it's essential as an actor if you truly want to be considered an actor of the theatre. Watching Peter O'Toole in something like this and much like when I sit down and watch Sir Anthony Hopkins perform, mm-hmm. every little flicker of his eye and parting of his lips and tap of his finger, it's all deliberate. And I see that in a performance like Peter O'Toole here in Lawrence of Arabia, that I would say this is essential viewing for actors. If you truly, truly want to be an actor, you need to watch performances like this and study them. If you're looking for entertainment, no, I don't think this, I would not put this on this, like, this is not a blockbuster movie. This is not an exciting movie. This is a mature film. This is an exploration of war, of humanity, of finding one's place in the midst of war. Yeah, it's from literarily speaking and performance speaking, I'm calling this an essential. And I don't know if we'll be able to watch another 4-hour movie anytime soon, but
I think we've watched some long ones lately, so I think we'll have to take a break from that. But I will give one more essential. Like, if you're somebody that really wants to see a film where basically the director is controlling everything,
there's a vision here.
Sir David Lean never saw any daily while filming. Never saw a daily. He only missed.
They didn't want to pull the film out to look at it. It would burst into flames. Right. I don't blame him.
This film with pre-production took about 3 years to make. It was filming wise, it was almost a full year.
Wow. 3
different locations.
Jeez.
Jordan, Morocco, and Spain for the different places, and having, but he loathed the second unit directors because they didn't have that same vision. Mm-hmm. So he would often take control of everything, every aspect of that.
Something we're discovering in this Essentials collection is the control freak nature of someone like David Lean here, Kurosawa, Kubrick. I think we're sensing a trend here.
We're sensing a trend here, yeah. But yeah, I cannot. I mean, yeah, and considering 3 years of work, and there were illnesses that went through there's so many people, there's so many animals, there's so many everything. You're putting yourself in harm's way. You know, they're filming in the middle of the desert, so they have to have trucks bringing water in.
Jeez. From
wells that are, hundreds of miles away. And having the, and knowing that he doesn't value second unit directors, and looking at some of those extremely large scenes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just can't imagine. I mean, just the films that you and I have worked on, like I've been second unit director a couple of times, and it helps speed up production.
It's true. Yeah.
That's a big plus.
Second unit, third unit, second unit. It's essential for helping the process.
And you're typically filming scenes that are, there's a lot going on, and the director needs to focus on certain pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Or you have a lot of different movement going on where the second unit director can focus on all the background people, and the first unit director again is focused on the main part. But again, he's taking control over all this, so he's got the vision and makes it work with hundreds of horses and camels as well.
Wild, just wild.
I couldn't imagine. I mean, you've obviously done a lot more directing than I have. You've directed more people in a scene than I have.
Yeah, I think the most would be 100. I don't think I've ever gone more than that.
How would you approach something like this?
I would have a second unit,
third unit, a fourth unit.
Gotta have the good team that you trust, and having a good AD and a second AD wrangling those extras and knowing the vision and the purpose of what's going to be happening. I looked at someone like Peter Jackson and Lord of the Rings specifically, and how he was able to capture very epic scenes, granted with CG help, but still with a lot of people involved. The modern technology we have available to us makes it easier in many ways to wrangle that many people. But I've done scenes with like 15 extras that got out of hand, so it's really just comes down to the nature of the production. But I'm willing to try. Give me 300 extras, I'll make it happen.
In 15 million.
There you go. That's all I ask. That's all I ask.
So just to kind of wrap this up, I think we've both said that this is essential.
Yep.
This film did very well at the Oscars for that year. It won Best Picture. Peter O'Toole did not win the Oscar, though.
Shame.
Shame. But it was nominated for 10 awards.
Nice.
It could have been up for 11, but they were late in submitting the makeup. But it won. It only lost. It won 7 Oscars for that year.
That's nothing to sneeze at. I'll take 7 Oscars, please.
Yep. So the 3 that lost were Best Actor Peter O'Toole, Best Supporting Actor Omar Sharif, and then Best Screenplay. So it won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, Best Film Editing, Best Music Score, and Best Sound.
Great. Well deserved straight across the board there. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, this was fun. I'm glad to have finally seen this and added it to my list. And very cool.
And this is one of the films where I feel we could honestly talk for like 3 hours because there's a lot here, but we're over our allotted time. Sorry, David. But anyway, it's a great film. I would encourage you to watch it. Just take the time to watch it. There is a break in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of breaking,
It's time to go.
It's time to go and announce our next essential film.
Yes. What is the essential we are watching next?
Well,
I
I know we're late. It's kind of you'll get to your dinner in a little bit. Go ahead. You want to?
We are okay. I was waiting for you to say it. Our next movie up is going to be George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, the original zombie movie.
Yeah, the one that put zombies on the map as far as a major horror element and inspired so many of the directors that we love today.
This will be fun. So come back next time for Night of the Living Dead. They're coming for you, Barbara.
All right. Well, and thank you, everybody. Again, this is a film is considered essential, so you have to see it. You have no choice.
There you go. No choice. You've committed. There you go. So, all right. Well, Schulze, thank you for having me on here.
Thank you, TC.
Yeah, and thank you all for listening. And you'll hear us next time, I suppose.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Filmological Society. If you'd like to listen to similar podcasts, please check out 6.5 Media on Stitcher, iTunes, and Facebook. Or check out Redacted Media on Facebook and YouTube.